Hello, and welcome to the Steve and Mark Discuss podcast, where this time I'll be bringing up a subject that Steve doesn't know what I'm going to be bringing up, and I'm going to do a bit of a brief introduction on it and see how Steve reacts to it. Right, I'm bringing up this subject because I've been looking on the BBC website, away from news and politics and even history. Just something caught my eye. And they have had a few articles recently, not just the BBC, a few other places as well, in recent months or times, weeks, all about time travel. So, yeah, here we go. Well, it's rather an interesting subject for me personally, and for some people around me possibly. In that, yeah, we grew up on science fiction with Doctor Who, TV series from the UK, known in the US, and I know in Brazil as well, and different other things. Like there's a famous film I watched many years ago that had Kirk Douglas as a captain of a naval ship from 1980s US that somehow went into back in time into the eve of the Pearl Harbor attack, and the moral issues and things about that, and what are the operational requirements. That aside, anyway, I did some research and I heard this story a while ago, and again, time travel is a big subject, so in 10 minutes it's going to be interesting what we get through. Now, there was a guy in the US in the 1990s called Mike Markham, who was probably a bit of an eccentric. I've met people like him. Yeah, I know a little bit. Well, I was in engineering in my past life. Still look at it occasionally, as again makes it interesting. And he used to do experiments in his own house. One thing he created was what's called a Jacob's ladder, which is a known thing, quite difficult to do, and it's where you get the V-shaped rods up in the ground, up in the air, and you basically get a spark jumping from one side to the other, which is actually a lot more difficult to achieve than you'd imagine, especially if you're going zzz, up the poles, as it were. So yeah, they're just sparks. And he had a transformer at the bottom. He created the correct environmental places for it using a couple of lasers from old CD players, because it's all about temperature and the correct environmental conditions to make this happen. He was messing around. Anyway, he looked above it and he saw a disturbance above it. Normally, it's like it could be like off the heat of a road or something. He noticed like a vortex. Being curious and a bit eccentric, he got a small screw and he chucked it up there, and he said it disappeared for a few seconds or half a second or something, then dropped back down again. Yeah, and he thought that's odd, as you would. I don't know how many more times he did, but then the transformer burnt out because it takes a lot of energy, and he was just messing around and probably didn't want to push his luck too much after that point. Anyway, he wanted to recreate the experiment. This is going somewhere, and he did. I mean, he managed to get hold. Well, let's just put it this way: he knew that the local electricity company had some unused bigger transformers that he went and took. Anyway, he brought these back to his house, hooked them up to the mains himself. He knew what he was doing. He's an electrical trained person, and then basically switched it on and managed to blank out half his neighbourhood. So anyway, he moved on, moving the story on a bit. Anyway, he looked at what happened and all that. He did it, maybe blanked them out a few times. But yeah, he got it going, and he had some friends around to witness it. So they had this thing going. It sounds like they had like a frat light party, probably some beers and everything else. This thing going, a big vortex at the top of it, and apparently they got the sofa and chucked the sofa into it, which probably disappeared. I don't know if it came back or not, but they managed to chuck a sofa through there. I think the story is it actually disappeared. Okay. So anyway, moving the story on, the police got a bit suspicious about what he was doing, had a warrant for his arrest. He got caught with a couple of stolen Transformers. They weren't being used by anyone, you know.
And then he disappears.
Well, no, yeah, it's coming. The story's coming. Yeah, basically, he ended up in prison for 80 days. He thought about what he could do. The story goes on. Then a local talk show host on the radio called Art Bell interviewed him, tracked him down and interviewed him. Yeah, and then he said, yeah, he said on the show he wasn't looking for fame. He was messing around. It just so happened the police took an interest in what he was doing. You know. Anyway, people wanted to send him money to fund his projects, and in fairness to him, he would invite them over to see what he was doing. So it wasn't a case of GoFundMe, you give them the money, then he goes on holiday somewhere. He was actually doing things. He was actually purchasing proper equipment and doing things. Now, he does claim at some point that he was operating this thing and decided to jump into the vortex himself to see what happened, thinking it probably just dropped down again, you know. Apparently, he ended up 800 miles away 2 years later, 2 years in the future. So he disappeared for 2 years. Anyway, he got back to his house again. He had to earn some money fruit picking or something to earn the fare back. He didn't have any money or anything else on him. I believe he had a mobile phone. I'm not sure, but apparently he looked at paper and saw it. Okay. And anyway, he made it back. So again, he got tracked down by this talk show host, and he explained it all. But again, he's not looking for money or fame or anything. He's just got that accidentally. And he explained what he was doing to this guy. But apparently, when he did his experiment, instead of using the lasers, he used magnets. And I can see how this could happen. Magnets to create a field, and up it went. And then, for some reason, it may have made a disturbance in the universe somehow. Now, it's interesting in this as well, and he's someone who did explain the problems of time travel, the issues, yeah, that the Earth is moving. So if you disappear somewhere, you come back, you're not going to come back in your same place. So if you get suspended somewhere, you could end up falling into space somewhere. And they've had other people, they believe, who have done this time traveling or claim to have done, who have actually managed to disappear. So I think that may have, there's a suspicion that may have happened, given that physicists have looked at what he was doing and say, theoretically it's possible, possibly not probable. Yeah, I'm not going to dismiss what he'd done. And I also agree that, yeah, it's interesting that he said he jumped to the future. So anyway, with that, over to you, Steve. Is time travel possible? Yeah.
Thanks very much for that hot potato.
Yeah.
Right. So here we go. Well, I think you were one step ahead of me when you said that he did eight months in the clink.
Yeah.
For nicking the Transformers.
Yeah.
We don't know where he disappeared to for during 2 years, and if Art Bell, he's famous.
Yeah.
In the US for these sort of interviews.
Yeah.
You know, of phenomenons, strange phenomena. If he interviewed him before and interviewed him 2 years later, you know, he would have to say, this guy would have to say to him, to Art Bell, look, I was here yesterday, or I was here last week.
Yeah.
Or the time it took him to return.
Yeah.
To where he lived in you know, Marco Zero.
Yeah.
And also, that could be a very good excuse for what to say when he spent all the money and didn't have anything to show for it. So he could have absconded.
Yeah, I know.
And then come back and said, look, you know, I threw myself up into this.
Yeah.
There must have been witnesses, of course.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I mean, well,
Well,
apparently,
possibly no, they should have. I'm sure they must have been.
yeah.
How is he going to climb up to get into
Well,
the?
apparently he jumped off a cherry picker. It's a story I've read,
Oh, right.
or a mute, or some type of mute, mobile.
What
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was the cherry picker's name?
No, no, no. It's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go for it. A mute, some type of mute. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Mobile elevated working mobile elevated working platform. I actually had a license in the UK to operate these things, so I know what he's talking about.
okay,
Um,
right.
but yeah,
Forklift truck for anybody else.
no. These things are a bit more, yeah, a bit more safer than them. But yeah, it's a again, yeah, because he said that because he went back to the place and apparently it's all been cleared out, either by the landlord or someone. I
Well,
mean,
one would have thought that if he jumped into this thing
hmm,
and disappeared,
he'd have had
that
people,
there'd still be function working when
yeah,
the next person came along and turned them all off.
well,
And they are the people that you need to speak
yeah,
with.
yeah.
You know,
I mean,
Art
yeah,
Bell's all right saying to the man who claims he's
yeah,
travelled 2 years
yeah.
when he should be speaking with somebody who's got his feet on the ground, saying, "Yeah, I came across this. I saw him
Mm,
jump in, and I
mm.
turned it afterwards after he'd left."
Well, I mean, at that time there'd have been videos being,
Is
yeah,
time travel possible? Of course it is.
yeah,
Everything's possible.
yeah.
The thing is that scientists rely on what we know,
Of course, yeah.
the laws of physics. You
Yeah.
know, there was Bob Lazar. I don't know
Mm,
if you've heard of him before,
mm,
but he claims he was in Area 51 working on a anti gravity
mm.
transport.
Yeah, the magnets.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right. So, and he found this element,
Mm.
some, something like elephant element
Element.
92 or
Yeah,
81 or something,
yeah,
which eventually was put on the that big chart full of elements.
yeah, yeah.
You
The
know,
periodic table. Periodic
yeah,
table. Yeah.
at the end. That defied all the laws of physics
Mm,
that people knew at the time.
mm.
There are always going to be new laws of physics being
Yeah,
discovered as we move along.
yeah,
Occasionally, you are going to get somebody who gets that um, spark,
yeah.
that just like
Okay.
Isaac Newton did when he
Yeah,
was reading his book below the apple tree.
totally. Yes, yeah.
Uh, Um,
Yeah.
you know, with people are going to discover things like they're trying to do with this with the
Yeah,
CERN collider. You
yeah,
know,
it's strange with discoveries because you don't often find what you're looking for. You'd have a series of
don't know,
experiments,
sure.
yeah, and sometimes the best research are offshoots of it.
The
When you do it,
byproducts of what you're looking
yeah,
at.
when
Yeah,
you're doing R&D, sometimes companies will park something. They'll come up with some. They keep their data. That looks interesting. Maybe a bit later we'll look at that. Yeah, they have to make decisions. Sometimes they'll abandon the mainstream and go, "Oh, this could be the." Yeah, no, I mean nobody's found. Yeah, I mean when you read about it, yeah, it's all to do with gravity and, like I said, the issues of time travel. My own personal view is moving this conversation with a few paragraphs is that it's as much as I would love to be able to travel back and see certain events and everything, I don't believe traveling back in time is possible for so many different reasons.
we do it, Mark. We do it all the time. We do it all the time. We move forward in time. We move backwards in time all the time. All you need to do is get on an aeroplane
mm,
and go to the left or go to the right.
well,
Because when you arrive in a different time zone,
yeah,
then you're moving. It is no longer 8 o'clock.
yeah, yeah. I know what you say. Yeah,
It
you've gone
all of a
back.
sudden
Yeah, but
becomes
that's a
midday.
man-made concept. I mean, we talk about time and
Yeah,
space here. Yeah,
that's right.
where you're
So
moving. I
right.
mean, and the other thing is, I mean, when the difficulties I have, and I had an argument with my father about this, is I would argue sometimes that the future has probably has already been defined because it's reliant on what the present and the past is. So any actions that are happening have happened in the past are happening now.
Yeah.
it's defined in the future. Now yeah, okay. It could be this guy, if he did actually travel, again, he's done an action in the present, which has now affected the future. If he has ended up 2 years later, 800 miles away, which would make sense actually if the spinning it bang down, he dropped somewhere else in a field or something. It is I mean, to me, yeah, it's the paradoxes and the shoestring paradoxes and everything else of traveling back in the past. Shooting Hitler, what would be the net result? Well, we don't know because nobody's managed it. And to me, that more or less proves that time travel doesn't exist as we know now.
Time travel at the moment is only a theory.
Well, of course it is, yeah.
And it can only be confirmed when it becomes controlled.
Well, yeah.
Once it's controlled, then we can get into our little capsules and program where we want to end up. If we want to relive our childhood, we can. If we want to see, what's going to happen to us in the end, we can. But at the moment, it's just imagination.
Well, actually, I mean,
some of the wildest nightmares and horrific things we can think about in our dreams.
Yeah.
Time travel is one of them. At the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions about you because there have been times when you've put things on this podcast and 2 weeks later, bang. Now, have you got a capsule in your room you're keeping off camera? That would be my next question.
No, I'm just on the outside looking in.
Yeah.